Two Jane Does, two separate cases, both in Mohave County. Investigators there hoping to ID the women so they can help figure out who killed them. This is Arizona Crime Uncovered. I'm Ashley Holden. I sat down with the investigator who has gone to lengths to try and identify these women killed decades ago. We also got an inside look at the lab in Texas, who has been helping the sheriff's office as they work these cases. They hope sharing more about these two women will lead to tips and ultimately help them as they try to push for justice in their cases.
We have worked a case since 2022. We have a Jane Doe who was found in 1981 in October.
Investigator Lori Miller says this woman was in her late 20s to early 30s. For this episode, we are going to call her Jane Doe 1.
Two campers who were camping in a cove off of Lake Mead were hiking around the corner of the cove and saw two legs sticking out of a shallow grave. The compelling thing about this case is that she was 4 months pregnant with what turned out to be a little girl.
Her cause of death, blunt force trauma. Investigating these cases decades ago meant relying on the little evidence found at the scene.
We resubmitted fingerprints. Once again, that's all they did back then in the 80s. No hits in 2022 on her fingerprints. We exhumed her in March of 2023, and we sent both her and the fetus to Othram in Texas to do the genetic genealogy. And we have just hit a block wall.
But through that testing, they were able to learn some clues about Jane Doe 1's life and connections outside Mohave County.
She's like first generation from Ireland. And so we even reached out to Ireland. We reached out to Interpol Washington. We did what is called a black notice. They put out a black notice to Ireland to find out if there were any missing women, especially pregnant women. Have not heard anything back thus far since 2023.
Their attempt to get a DNA profile for the baby in hopes of finding the father were unsuccessful.
We've contacted people in New South Wales. We've contacted people in London. We've contacted people all over, and we have not found anything to lead us to the next step. She had an unusual cross, a Celtic cross, and a ring that were recovered as a piece of jewelry. We still continue to try to find leads, but that's another one. It was in a remote cove, like a mile north of Fishfinder's Bay in Lake Mead. It was an area that you had to boat into. We've checked all the boating records. We just can't find any ties. And she was not dressed. Her clothes were not the kind that you go, no bathing suit. She had slacks and a shirt on. So it's not like she was boating or, there was either she was killed and put in the boat and dumped, or somebody led her astray and said, let's go for a boat ride.
You think about Mohave County, and I feel like we've talked about how you guys can be forgotten because you're in between not only news markets, but in between major cities.
Yeah, and once again, it comes back to somebody knew that she was coming to Arizona, maybe she was going to the Grand Canyon, maybe she was going to the Hoover Dam, maybe she was going to Lake Mead. I mean, there was, it's not like she was just from, Phoenix and decided to go for a boat ride on Lake Mead. This person, came here for a specific reason, and somebody's got to know about that. And that's once again, it leads to the frustration. Somebody has to know something. And I've checked all the databases, local, no missing persons nationally, and no response from Ireland or anywhere back there.
Identity can be a major piece of the puzzle for all Jane and John Doe cases. It's something Sergeant John Cole with the Sheriff's Office talked about when ABC15 went to visit Kingman.
These cases, we don't have a lot to go on a lot of these cases until we identify the person. That's the main important thing, because after we identify who it is, we can kind of follow up on leads and follow up on family. Maybe they had a direction to go, and that's the big thing with this. Until we know who it is, we really have no direction to go in, or very little direction to go in, I should say.
If we could just ID her, then we work backwards. Who she is, once we find that out, who she was with, and then, what brought her here, and so we have something to follow up on.
And that's their focus for not only this doe, but another found back in the 70s. The Mohave County Sheriff's Office knows the desert in their area can easily hold secrets.
Mohave County is the 5th largest county in the U.S. as far as I know still to this day. Our county, we have a sheriff's office that covers, all the way to northern Arizona, southern Utah, Bullhead City, Lake Havasu, Kingman. It's a big area, and there's a lot of wide open desert, a lot of wide open area in between the cities.
Lori Miller is hoping to find just one clue that could help her learn more about the young woman we are calling Jane Doe 2.
She's between 16 and 20 years old, just a little girl. I assume she was hitchhiking because she was found decomposed off of Highway 93 around milepost 9.
A camper in the area finding her, but her body had been there so long the sheriff's office couldn't determine her cause of death.
Young girl, 5'3", 120 pounds. The only evidence that we have to go, again, her clothing, her jewelry. She was wearing a choker, a little beaded choker like they used to wear back then, and a little ring.
Pictures of the jewelry she was wearing were given to us by the sheriff's office. The tiny pieces of the puzzle they hope someone will recognize.
That's all that we really have to go on. We have to work backwards. We need to ID her to figure out how she came to be where she was found. Did she hitchhike with somebody? Did she, did somebody, it was a rest stop. Did she have a boyfriend that she met up with, and then an argument ensued and he killed her there, or what happened?
Newspaper clippings from that time describe parents all over the country contacting the sheriff's office, wondering if the young woman was their loved one. Investigators at the time believing she had been in the Wash area where she was found for over a month. It seems like, despite growing in technology, having places like Othram, it's still hard to identify who some of these people are if they didn't have fingerprints taken somewhere else because of how little they had back then.
Yes, and what I'm finding in doing these forensic genetic genealogy investigations, obviously the younger people who may be more removed as a relative, they're more likely to work with you because they know about the technology, and they know about the buccal swabs, and they know about the commercial kits. But as you get to talking to people in the older cases who are older, they're not as likely to participate or to help you out in these investigations. And unfortunately, those are the people that we need. Those are the ones that we actually, because in their instance, their DNA is a closer centimorgan match than it is to the nieces or nephews and who are more than willing or who have already uploaded their kids.
Miller says since she's been working with Mohave County, they have successfully identified 16 Jane or John Does through a combination of prints and DNA. As Sergeant Cole and Miller have told us, their special investigative unit and their department truly cares.
But after time goes by, it just seems like people care less. And we don't, this division is really dedicated to trying to finding victims and the families and trying to find out what happened to them, even if it happened 23 years ago.
And I feel like one of your big goals is to let people know that their case and their person really matters as you investigate these cold cases.
And that's one of the first things I tell these people, because, and once again, I don't know the reasons leading up to why I do this job, or what led to this unit being created. But I just tell people that, Mohave County, we haven't forgotten you. We haven't forgotten your loved ones, and that we're still trying to figure out what happened to them in this county.
Both of these Jane Doe cases sent to Othram, a lab in the Houston area, playing a key role in giving some of these victims their name back.
Ultimately, we are providing investigators with new investigative leads that they otherwise wouldn't have. I would say they're one of the more active agencies in the country, and we have quite a few active ones.
Michael Vogan is the director of case management for Othram, which is located in the Houston area. Their lab and testing helping departments all over the country to solve cases, including some in Mohave County.
We've been doing this now almost 7 years. And we're the first private lab in North America that was built to exclusively generate human ID from forensic evidence. So we exclusively work with law enforcement, coroners, medical examiners to basically figure out DNA from a crime scene if it's a suspect case, or in a lot of the cases like we're doing with Mohave, it can be unidentified human remains. And that's all we do. We built a complete end-to-end forensic process that enables us to collect a ton of data from the DNA that's sent in, and kind of compared to what traditional DNA testing, which looks at like 20 to 24 markers of DNA, we're looking at hundreds of thousands, upwards to 1 million markers of DNA, and collecting a ton of data that can then be used to create these profiles that can be used for forensic genetic genealogy, for distant relationship testing.
It seems like what you guys are doing is really giving law enforcement this piece of the puzzle that's so crucial that they sometimes didn't have before, or any way to figure this out.
One thing I've learned is that investigators are incredibly thorough using the tools that they have at their disposal. This is a new tool, and so we're trying to develop the technology that can have this applied to all cases anywhere, no matter of circumstances. If there's DNA left at a crime scene, it shouldn't sit after it's gone through traditional measures. It should be bumped up to advanced DNA testing like we offer at Othram. And so kudos to the Mohave folks. They've really embraced this technology, embraced working with us, and we've had quite a bit of success with them. And to your point, that's what we're doing. We're basically giving them more information that they had previously, and that they can go out and do what they do best and investigate and confirm our hypothesis.
Human remains found in a wash in Golden Valley near Kingman have now been identified as a man missing since 2019. The remains were discovered after being washed up in recent flooding. The Mohave County Sheriff's Office says DNA testing identified the remains as 30-year-old Jordan Carvalho.
ABC15 reporting on some of those identifications in Mohave County, where Othram has helped, including the case of Colleen Rice.
This high school photo shows Colleen Audrey Rice of Ohio, the victim of a homicide that dates back 52 years in northwestern Arizona. Before now, all authorities had were her remains.
Can you take us through the process of, if Mohave County or another department sends you, something from their case, how do you go from having that to then, being able to help them give a name to someone again?
So we have an online case review system that all law enforcement has access to. So they can submit a case online, they can upload any lab reports from previous testing to give us an idea of what DNA is there. And basically off that paper that they upload, we can make a determination if we feel we can help. And if we feel we can help, we accept the case. They get shipping instructions with a barcode to initiate chain of custody, and the evidence is shipped to us and checked in. From there, it goes through a suitability analysis step. So even though we've kind of done a paper review, now we have the DNA in front of us, and we do basically a 4-point inspection to make sure that the DNA is tractable to move forward to sequencing, because that's where you're going to burn the DNA. And we have thousands of true sets now from all the cases that we've worked on, and so we make sure from that suitability analysis step that the DNA we're going to work from falls within that window of success. And if it does, it moves along to sequencing. It's forensic grade genome sequencing is our patented sequencing method. That's where we look at the hundreds of thousands of markers, pull the DNA out. It's then formatted to basically be uploaded to databases to try to find distant relationships. From there, we have an in-house team of 15 genealogists they're assigned a case, so they'll be assigned this case that we're talking about, and they'll start doing their research, going through public records, building family trees, ultimately trying to find the most recent common ancestors of matches in our profile, and then reverse engineer our way kind of back to the direct family line from which the DNA originates. And then we develop a report for them, a written report that'll be delivered to the investigators with our recommendations of who to talk to, what questions to ask, what family information to gather, and then they do what they do best and investigate the information we give them. And we have a lot of agencies that are larger in scope, that have a lot of active cases, that are now using us very frequently, and not even for cold cases. We're now starting to work very modern cases. So as soon as something happens and they do the traditional DNA testing, if it doesn't reveal an identity, they're immediately flipping it to us, and away we go. And that's how I think the future of this testing is going to be applied universally, is as soon as traditional investigation concludes and you don't have an identity, let's try the next thing.
Back in the 80s and 70s, when some of these women and men were found and were unable to be identified, I mean, all they had to rely on were like footprints in the sand, right, and their fingerprints. I mean, you think about how far we've come with technology.
There's no shortage of these. I think NamUs, which is the online catalog of unidentified and missing folks here in the United States, has over 15,000 unidentified remains cases cataloged, and who knows how many additional ones are out there that are not cataloged. And to your point, you know, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the technology wasn't around to develop these type of profiles and that could use these type of tools for investigation. And so to your point, you're exactly right. They had, if they were lucky, they would have clothing still available that they could put in a description. They would have maybe some jewelry, maybe some initials written on things, or footsteps in the sand, you know, that sort of thing. So now really we don't need a lot. We don't need a lot of DNA. We need a bone. You know, that's generally what we work from unidentified human remains cases. So, and those preserve, which is a good thing. So we are usually able to help, even if it's a super old case.
With both of these Jane Doe cases also in the hands of Othram, they're watching and waiting, hoping to get a match through genetic genealogy. But in the meantime, Miller is hoping someone hears the stories of these two Jane Does and the work she has tried to do. She believes someone out there might see their jewelry or hear the details they do have and give her team that key to learning who they are and what happened all those years ago. For decades, these two women have shared a name. Miller hopes to change that. If you have any information about either of the Jane Does, you're asked to call the Mohave County Sheriff's Office. We'll follow all the developments here on Arizona Crime Uncovered. Thank you for watching Arizona Crime Uncovered. We're working to bring awareness to crimes where victims are still awaiting justice and also provide an in-depth look at cases still unfolding. Each episode breaks down a timeline of the case, where it stands now, and if any help is needed from the community. You can watch on ABC15.com, the ABC15 mobile app, Roku, YouTube, or any of your other streaming platforms.